both cultures, both my Scottish and my Jamaican heritage, there are these strong traces of knitwear and craftsmanship and this DIY aesthetic on my father's side, being from Jamaica. Jute for me has been a constant fibre and yarn which has always been intertwined within my collection since my graduate collection back at Central St Martin's and right through to my most recent collection. Jute features in my work through the accessories, the knitting and crocheting, and the sort of tams which I make, the bucket hats. They're probably the best example. That's obviously inspired by my Jamaican heritage and culture as a piece, but then also bringing in the crocheting and knitting. You know, the supplier which we get the jute from is still based in Forfar in Scotland. So it's definitely like a piece which is an amalgamation of craft, culture, and obviously the community around it. Collaborating with my mother on the knitwear, it was from my graduate collection where I asked her to knit a string vest, obviously inspired by sort of Jamaican, West Indian culture, and she made one or two of those, and they were part of the runway show.
If you were to ask me now, if I'd known then that sort of whatever it is, 10, 12 years later, that knitting of a couple of string vests would have turned into a whole industry, I never saw that coming. The country and the culture I was brought up in, all the women knitted, so it was pretty much expected that you would be able to knit. But it was really my grandmother who was the one that was the biggest influence. I mean, she had, I think, 8 grandchildren, and she knitted for all of us all the time. So we were kind of all clothed, woolen-wise, by her, really. So she was just a constant. And actually, when she died, she didn't leave very much, but I got her knitting patterns. That's what I've got from my grandmother. So a whole load of them, going back over the years.
Once it was thought that jute would never spin. It was so brittle, so dusty, but they persisted and oiled it and made from it the best cheap yarn in the world.
I mean, the jute mills kind of came to their height, I guess, at the end of the 19th and into early 20th, sort of first half of the 20th century. And we would have had people in our family working in the jute mills. So my grandmother, my great aunt, and my great aunts, and in fact one of my great uncles. That was, if you want, the only gig in town almost. Almost everybody in Dundee worked in the jute mills. I can remember as a child going into the jute mills, and the noise was tremendous. The clacking of the looms was a huge noise. But I'll be honest, I was glad that I was going to get an education and I wasn't going to be working in that kind of environment. When Nicholas was developing his collection, and I'd already been doing some knitting for him, but just on my own, and it was clear I couldn't do it all on my own. So I just put something in the community newsletter saying I was looking for hand knitters. Knitting is like your signature. You and I could write the same word, it will say the same thing, but how you write it is really different from me. You know, I guess if you had 100 knitters, the people we've got working for us are in that sort of top 10%, really.
I can make one bag every 2 days. And if I did a messenger bag, which is a different design, I can do one bag every 3 days. I do the bags, I do the belts, I do all the pouches. So yeah, 6 years I've been working on all of Nick's work, and it's been a good journey.
Exhibition which I've produced, Return to Sligo, is paying homage to my parents, who ran one of the sort of earliest reggae clubs in Scotland. and they called it the Reggae Club, and my dance sound system was called Iman Sligo Sound System. Return to Sligo is this play on returning back to that time and sound system culture and what my parents did with the Reggae Club.
It was my husband, it was all his idea. I was just the support act. He had left the Royal Marines and he'd come to settle in Edinburgh, and he wanted to do something in music. He'd always wanted to do something in music, so he thought, well, this is my opportunity. Edinburgh at that point was a pretty white city. And the minority black community, which, you know, was a real mixture of kind of African, some Caribbean, that there wasn't really a kind of focal point. And what we became aware of was that kind of more and more of that community began to come to our club because they felt an affinity with the music that we were playing.
I'd like to think my fashion shows are hopefully bringing people in to my world, or trying to highlight lots of different people and different craft. You know, what my parents did all those years ago, I'm just doing my best to honour that, preserve it and celebrate it.